The legendary Pink Floyd guitarist David Gilmour has lately spoken up about a long-lived mystery that has baffled followers of the band, who are now 78 years old. Gilmour has spoken frankly about the band's shocking split in an interview, illuminating the deep power struggles, resentments, and artistic disagreements that contributed to the dissolution of one of the best bands of all time. Gilmour's fresh perspective clarifies why Roger Waters, Pink Floyd's former bandmate, was responsible for the band's demise. What did David Gilmour finally admit, and what set off this dramatic conflict? Here from the man who was there, we will reveal the truth behind Pink Floyd's demise. Pink Floyd's iconic guitarist and vocalist, David Gilmour, came into this world in Cambridge, England on March 6, 1946. His artistic and musical upbringing as a member of a highly educated family greatly influenced his professional trajectory. His full name is David John Gilmour. His mom, Sylvia, had a background in education and later became a film editor for the BBC. His dad, Douglas, was a senior lecturer in zoology at Cambridge University. They were residents of Trumpington, Cambridgeshire, when Gilmour was born. They relocated multiple times before finally settling into Grantchester in 1956. Gilmour's parents always supported his musical ambitions, and in 1954 he purchased his debut single, Rock Around the Clock by Bill Haley. Elvis Presley's Heartbreak Hotel sparked his interest in the guitar the following year, and the Everly Brothers' By Love did the same. A neighbor let him borrow their guitar, and he never returned it. Not long after that, Gilmour began self-teaching his instrument with the help of Pete Seeger's book and record collection. Gilmour started at Perth School on Hills Road, Cambridge, when he was 11 years old, and he hated it. On Hills Road at Cambridgeshire High School for Boys, he crossed paths with Syd Barrett and Roger Waters, who would go on to form Pink Floyd. Gilmour enrolled in the Cambridgeshire College of Arts and Technology in 1962 to study modern languages at the A level. He did not complete the training, but he did manage to become fluent in French. During his lunch breaks, Barrett, who was also a college student, would often join Gilmour to practice guitar. Gilmour became a member of Joker's Wild, a blues rock band, at the end of 1962. Regent Sound Studio on Denmark Street was the site of their one-sided album and single recordings, of which just 50 were ever manufactured. Along with Rick Wills and Willie Wilson, who had been a member of Joker's Wild, Gilmour went to France in the middle of 1967. Although they tried performing as Flowers and later Bullet, the trio never found commercial success. Thieves took their gear shortly after they arrived in Paris because club owners were hesitant to pay them after hearing their versions of popular songs. 2 weeks in September, a French film starring Brigitte Bardot had Gilmour on lead vocals for 2 of the songs. Barrett, Waters, Nick Mason, and Richard Wright, all of whom were classmates of Gilmour's at Cambridge, formed Pink Floyd in 1967 and published their first studio album, The Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Gilmour made a short trip back to London that made a look for replacement gear. He was astonished to discover that Barrett, who was starting to experience mental health issues, did not appear to know him when he viewed the Pink Floyd album See Emily play during his visit. Gilmour was extended an invitation to join Pink Floyd by Roger Waters, Nick Mason, and Richard Wright in late 1967, when Syd Barrett's condition was deteriorating as a result of his mental health concerns and frequent drug usage. But as Barrett's performance deteriorated, he quickly took over as the band's principal guitarist. He decided to quit the band in March 1968 after finding working with Barrett to be too challenging. In Barrett's absence, the band shifted their focus from singles to live performances, where they continued to experiment with lighting and sound with mixed results. They broke into the American charts in 1970 with Atom Heart, Mother, and again in 1971 with Metal, following a string of albums that served as soundtracks for motion pictures. The band made a substantial impact on the concept album genre by releasing songs-based albums with a theme approach and lengthy instrumental sections. Their 1973 album, The Dark Side of the Moon, was a huge commercial success. Highlighted by Waters' gloomy songwriting, this album provided a somber examination of death and emotional breakdown. For over a decade, it topped the US pop charts, catapulting Pink Floyd into the megastar category. The 1975 follow-up album Wish You Were Here featured Barrett's song Shine On You Crazy Diamond, which reached #1 in the US and UK, but was panned by critics for being uninspired and ostentatious. Gilmour started to feel that Pink Floyd wasn't making the most of his musical abilities in the late 1970s. His 1978 solo effort, David Gilmour, included his guitar work and compositions. When Pink Floyd's 1979 album The Wall was released, the audience became accustomed to hearing music that had been written for the record but had been left off until the very end. While recording the final cut and the film The Wall, Gilmour and Waters' relationship declined. Because of the depressing vibes, Gilmour recorded his 1984 solo album About Face. From his connection with Waters to the assassination of John Lennon, he utilized it to convey his emotions on several subjects. Backed by the TV personalities who were demoted following the performance by singer Dan Treacy, who disclosed Barrett's address to the audience. The United Kingdom portion of the tour, which saw various postponements but ultimately generated a profit, featured Mason as a special guest. After a tour, Gilmour produced the Dream Academy, whose songs included the 1986 US Top 10 hit Life in a Northern Town, and performed guitar for a variety of musicians. Short and Sweet, which was originally recorded for Gilmour's debut solo album, was one of 5 songs that Gilmour co-wrote for Roy Harper's 1980 album, The Unknown Soldier. Harper performed Short and Sweet as an unexpected guest during Gilmour's Hammersmith Odeon performance in April 1984. This was a part of Gilmour's live performance film from 1984. Concerning Your Face, not only did Gilmour appear on Brian Ferry's 1985 solo album Boys and Girls, but she also sang Is Your Love Strong Enough on the soundtrack of the Ridley Scott-Tom Cruise picture Legend, which was released in the United States that same year. Ferry and Gilmour were featured in the Is Your Love Strong Enough music video, which used footage from the film. That July, Gilmour and Ferry performed at the Live. His 1985 contributions include the single Give Blood from Pete Townshend's album White City, a novel, and Grace Jones's album Slave to the Rhythm. What many fans have been wondering for years has finally been disclosed by David Gilmour. What caused one of the most groundbreaking rock bands to break up in the end? The band's breakup was mostly due to Roger Waters' actions, but it was also the result of years of creative disagreements, personal issues, and outside influences. Roger Waters had become the band's de facto leader by the late 70s, penning the bulk of the band's songs and dictating its overall trajectory. This change started with Moonlight Sonorous and persisted through albums like 1977's Animals and Wish You Were Here. With the release of Animals, Pink Floyd's internal strife had intensified and Waters had established himself as the band's main influence. The Wall 1979 and the Final Cut 1983 were the pinnacle of Waters' preferred method of making albums, which was heavily conceptual and narratively focused. The other band members, especially David Gilmour, believed that the band's collaborative spirit was being stifled by Waters' growing influence over the band's music, even though these albums were popular. Waters blamed keyboardist Richard Wright for artistic and personal issues, and he wanted Wright out of the band while they were recording The Wall. Despite losing his job, Wright volunteered to continue on with the album tour as a session musician. This episode demonstrated Waters' increasing dominance and exacerbated the band's internal strife. Although Gilmour made substantial contributions to The Wall, she felt marginalized because the project was mostly Roger Waters's. With little influence from the other musicians, the Final Cut, originally meant as a soundtrack for the film The Wall, became essentially a solo album by Waters. Many considered this album to be the tipping point since it revealed the widening gap in the band's creative direction. For Roger Waters, the band could not go on without him. Thus, he formally departed Pink Floyd in 1985. He thought Pink Floyd would break up, but David Gilmour, Nick Mason, and Richard Wright, who joined later, opted to keep playing music under that name. Waters got into a court battle because he wanted to stop the other members from utilizing the Pink Floyd name. Waters obtained ownership over certain rights, including The Wall, but Gilmour and Mason retained the rights to the name. The legal struggle was eventually resolved outside of court. Following Waters' exit, Gilmour assumed leadership of Pink Floyd, and 1987 saw the release of A Momentary Lapse of Reason. Despite its commercial success, the album was met with mixed reviews. Some critics and fans saw it more as a solo effort by Gilmour than as an official Pink Floyd record. Issues of understanding and coming together were central to The Division Bell, the band's last studio album including the original lineup. The end of Pink Floyd's active recording career came with it, despite its positive reviews and commercial success. The in-concert release documents Gilmour's 2001 and 2002 acoustic solo performances in Paris and London, accompanied by a small band and choir. Sept. 24, 2004 was the date on which Gilmour at the Strat Pack concert, which celebrated the Fender Stratocaster's half-century anniversary at London's Wembley Arena. He played a set of 3 songs. Pink Floyd performed at Live 8 with Waters back on vocals on July 2, 2005. Echoes, a compilation album featuring Pink Floyd's greatest hits, saw a spike in sales following the performance. Though the major objective has been to raise attention and put pressure on the G8 leaders, I will not benefit from the concert, Gilmour said, before donating his earnings to charity that mirror the goals of Live 8. We should be using this money to save lives, not waste it. He urged all of the Live 8 performers to give a portion of their earnings to the concert's benefit. Pink Floyd declined a $150 million offer to tour the United States following the show. In 2006, Gilmour stated that Pink Floyd would probably not perform live or release new music again. For my part, I've had enough. I am 60 years of age. My motivation to work has diminished. I owe a great deal of my life to Pink Floyd. The best time of my life has come to an end. I find that working independently is far easier. The publication of Gilmour's 3rd solo album, On an Island, coincided with his 60th birthday. Wright was one of the guest musicians, while Polly Sampson, Gilmour's wife and a writer, wrote the lyrics. It was Gilmour's first solo effort to get into the US top 10, debuting at number 1 on the UK albums chart and peaking at number 6 on the Billboard 200. On an Island reached gold status in Canada on September 21, 2011, after selling over 50,000 copies. May 2006 was Gilmour's tour month across North America. Alongside Wright and members of Pink Floyd's crew, including Dick Perry, Guy Pratt, and John Caron. September 17, 2007, was the release date of the DVD Remember That Night Live at the Royal Albert Hall. Gilmour joined the Polish Baltic Philharmonic Orchestra's 38-piece string section for their last performance. Live in Gdansk was the name given to its 2008 release. After Barrett passed away in 2006, Gilmour paid tribute to him by releasing a cover of Pink Floyd's Arnold Layne in December of that year. It included renditions of the song by Wright and David Bowie, recorded live at London's Royal Albert Hall. On the UK singles chart, it peaked at number 19. Gilmour reassembled his touring band in early 2007 and recorded for 1 week in a barn on his property. His subsequent solo albums included some of the tracks. Gilmour joined Malian artists Amadou and Mariam for a concert at London's Union Chapel on May 25, 2009. The charity Crisis organized the performance as part of their Hidden Gigs initiative, which aims to combat hidden homelessness. Gilmour performed at London's Royal Albert Hall on July 4 with his friend Jeff Beck. Performing a duet of Jerusalem, Gilmour and Beck brought the evening to a close with a triumphant finale. To bring attention to the case of Gary McKinnon, who was suspected of computer hacking, Gilmour released an online single titled Chicago Changed the World in August 2009. It included McKinnon, Chrissy Hynde, and Bob Geldof, and it was a retitled version of the Graham Nash song Chicago. Longtime collaborator Chris Thomas of Pink Floyd was in charge of production. Together with Waters, Gilmour gave a performance in Oxfordshire, England for the charity Hoping Foundation. Witnesses said they saw Gilmour and Waters laughing and joking with their spouses, suggesting that their animosity had resolved. After performing Comfortably Numb with Waters at the O2 in London on May 12, 2011, Gilmour and Nick Mason joined the band for a performance of Outside the Wall by the end of the show. Gilmour and electronic group The Orb put out their album Metallic Spheres in October. Pink Floyd's 2014 album The Endless River was published on November 7th. I believe we have effectively commandeered the best of what there is, Gilmour remarked, confirming that this would be Pink Floyd's final studio album. Regrettably, this marks the final chapter. It was impossible, in Gilmour's opinion, to do without Wright. Thus, there was no supporting tour. Gilmour reiterated that Pink Floyd had broken up and that a reunion without Wright would have been inappropriate. Rattle That Lock, his fourth studio album as a solo artist, was released in September. The BBC Two documentary David Gilmour, Wider Horizons, which focused on Gilmour, aired on November 14th. Selected theaters began showing Gilmour's live at Pompeii on September 13, 2017, a live CD and video documenting his two performances at the Amphitheater of Pompeii on July 7, 2016 and August 8, 2016. When it came out on September 29, 2017, it quickly rose to the top 3 on the UK albums chart. In commemoration of the occasion, Mayor Ferdinando Giuliano bestowed the honorary citizen designation upon Gilmour by the city of Pompeii. The feud between Waters and Gilmour persisted, with the two men battling over reissues of Pink Floyd albums and the band's online presence. Waters believes that writing is everything. He won't say anyone can play guitar or sing, but rather that everything should be evaluated on the writing rather than the performance, according to Mason, who is close to both of them. This led Mason to claim in 2018 that Waters did not appreciate Gilmour. Gilmour began streaming live with his family in April 2020, performing Barrett and Leonard Cohen tunes. Yes, I Have Ghosts was his first single since 2015, released in July of 2020. Romany, Sampson's daughter, makes her recording debut on harp and backup vocals. He also wrote the lyrics. Gilmour and Waters' relationship struck rock bottom in 2021, according to Rolling Stone. Polly Sampson, who is Gilmour's wife, took to Twitter in early 2023 to accuse Waters of being anti-Semitic, as well as a liar, thief, hypocrite, tax avoider, misogynist, megalomaniac, and sick with jealousy. Every word of Gilmour's Twitter response to the tweet was true. When Russia invaded Ukraine in April 2022, Gilmour and Mason reunited Pink Floyd and released the song Hey Hey, Rise Up as a protest. According to Gilmour, Pink Floyd only recorded the song once. Music Radar reports that Gilmour is well known in the classic rock community and that many younger guitarists consider him to be the sole significant guitarist from the 1970s. A lot of people saw him as the one who could have bridged the gap between Hendrix and Van Halen. Gilmour may not be as showy as Jimmy Page or Jimi Hendrix on stage, but his guitar technique is more expressive, according to Billy Say-Fong of Music Radar. Inductees to the Rock Roll Hall of Fame included Gilmour, who was a member of Pink Floyd. Publications such as Rolling Stone and the Daily Telegraph have placed him among the top guitarists of all time. Readers of Guitar World's January 2007 issue chose Gilmour's solos from Comfortably Numb, Time and Money as 3 of the best 100 ever. Gilmour was ranked by Rolling Stone as the 14th best guitarist of all time in 2011. Steve Rothery, guitarist from Marillion, named Gilmour as one of 3 major influences. Guitarist John Mitchell of It Bites and Arena, among others, has mentioned Gilmour as an inspiration. Spandau Ballet's guitarist and songwriter Gary Kemp, who also happens to be a member of Nick Mason's Saucerful of Secrets, made the case in 2013 that Gilmour was the finest guitarist of the last century due to his work on The Moon's Dark Side. David Gilmour is indelibly etched into rock music history as a major character thanks to his immense and extensive career as a performer, composer, and record producer. His solo work and contributions to Pink Floyd are etched into the annals of music forever.